The thing about Colorado winters is that they can make you forget the rest of the world exists. Somewhere between the endless white silence of the high backcountry and the glittering chaos of the ski towns below, people discover a different version of themselves. Freer, lighter, braver. For some, that version is temporary. But for others, it becomes a calling. Jake Lawson, Sarah Whitmore, and Marcus Alvarez were three of those people. To locals in Summit County, they weren't just familiar faces. They were legends in the low-key, affectionate way mountain towns save their reverence for those who truly live the lifestyle. People called them the Three-Chimney Ghosts because they were always seen climbing couloirs that no one else dared, or the Dawn Patrol, because they were always skinning up before sunrise. But most often, they were simply known as ski bums, and they wore the term like a badge of honor. They worked only enough to survive. Jake tuning skis in a Breckenridge shop, Sarah waiting tables at a cafe that catered to dawn starters, and Marcus doing seasonal photography gigs for resorts and outdoor brands. Every spare dollar went toward gear, avalanche courses, or gas money to reach the trailheads that dotted the White River National Forest. What brought them to Colorado in the first place might have been different, but what kept them there was the same, a devotion to pure, unfiltered wilderness. Jake had grown up in Wisconsin. Flat, windy, endless winters, but no mountains to speak of. He came to Colorado initially for a single ski season when he was 19. 12 years later, he hadn't left. He was the most technically skilled skier of the group, strong and fast, the guy who could skin uphill for 3 hours and still be the first one to drop in. He didn't chase adrenaline. He chased perfection. And in a way, that made him more cautious than the others. When Jake said a slope was good to go, everyone trusted it. Sarah was different. Colorado wasn't a place she stumbled into. It was her dream since childhood. She had grown up in Virginia, working summers at an adventure camp, saving every dollar until she could afford a one-way ticket west. She had a halo of wild auburn hair, a laugh that echoed like wind chimes, and a reputation for skiing lines most people only watched on documentaries. But beneath her fearless exterior was a meticulous planner. She was always the one double-checking avalanche beacons, radio batteries, and weather models. The guys joked that Sarah could predict a storm with more accuracy than Noah. Marcus, the photographer, was the romantic soul of the trio. Born and raised in San Diego, he found the ocean too crowded and too warm. He wanted something that demanded respect. Colorado's mountains were the first place he felt truly challenged. Marcus wasn't the strongest skier, but he had a way of reading terrain visually, spotting lines that would photograph like magic. His GoPro edits, filled with soft powder turns and sweeping drone shots, had built him a small but dedicated online following. Together, the three formed a bond that felt almost mythic. Locals said they moved through the backcountry like a single organism. Jake the logic, Sarah the intuition, Marcus the vision. They were inseparable. If you saw one, you expected the others nearby. That was why, on the night before the storm, the one that would set everything in motion, the energy at the tiny rental cabin they shared outside Breckenridge was electric. The night before, it was February 17th. A classic Colorado cold snap had settled over Summit County, sharpening the edges of the trees and turning every breath into drifting crystals. The forecast promised a major dump of fresh powder, nearly 3 feet at elevation. For ordinary skiers, that meant resort chaos. For backcountry skiers like them, it meant the Holy Grail. Inside the cabin, warm lights spilled from the windows onto thick banks of snow. The wood stove crackled. Their gear was already laid out across the living room floor. Touring skis, skins, airbag packs, beacon batteries charging in a messy cluster on the counter. Jake was pacing excitedly, double-checking topo maps of the area they had decided on. Quandary Peak South Bowl, a broad and less frequented descent that required a long skin-in but rewarded with wide-open turns and deep, protected snowpack. Not many skiers bothered with it because it wasn't as famous or as extreme as some nearby peaks. But that was exactly why the trio loved it. Sarah was making notes in her weather journal: wind speeds, temperature shifts, recent snowpack layers. She tapped her pen rhythmically as she read data off her laptop. Marcus was editing footage from their last tour, pausing every few seconds to show the others a particularly beautiful shot. "This one's going in the season montage," he kept saying. They stayed up later than they should have, talking about nothing and everything. Future lines they wanted to ski, plans for summer climbing, jokes about how they were going to float on the next day's powder. Outside, the storm rolled in silently. And somewhere in that night, without any of them knowing, it marked the last time Jake, Sarah, and Marcus were ever seen alive in the warmth and comfort of a home. The morning of February 18th began the way perfect powder days always do in the Colorado high country: quiet, cold, and full of promise. Just before dawn, a soft blue haze settled over Summit County. Streetlights glowed through swirling flakes as snow continued to fall from the night storm, tracing ghost-like patterns across the narrow mountain roads. The temperature hovered around 12 degrees Fahrenheit minus 11 degrees Celsius, cold enough to keep the new snow feather light, the kind backcountry skiers obsess over. Inside the trio's cabin, alarms chimed at 4:37 a.m. Early preparations. Jake was the first one up, as usual. He moved with an almost ritualistic efficiency, heating water, checking the weather advisory one last time, and stepping out onto the porch to measure the new snowfall depth. He filmed a short video for his Instagram story. Nothing dramatic, just a pan across the trees loaded with fresh powder, their branches drooping like sleeping giants. 30 inches easy, he whispered to the camera. This is going to be unreal. That video would later be replayed by investigators, reporters, and internet sleuths thousands of times. Sarah woke next. She tied her hair up, zipped her base layers, and began checking everyone's avalanche beacons. A photograph on her phone, timestamped 5:06 a.m., showed the trio's beacons lined up neatly on the counter, their green lights blinking. She had captioned it, "Safety first. Let's go find some magic." Marcus stumbled out of his room last, half asleep, camera bag already packed from the night before. On his GoPro, a final clip recorded at 5:22 a.m. showed him jokingly narrating their departure. "Operation Face Shot starts now. South Pole, you better be ready." Their gear. They carried touring skis with fresh skins, avalanche beacons, probes, and shovels, two-way radios, an airbag pack for each skier, a GPS unit with both digital and paper topo maps, 2 thermoses of hot tea, minimal food, just energy bars and gels. Marcus's camera gear, including a drone and 2 batteries. Everything indicated they were well prepared, experienced, and cautious. They left the cabin at 5:40 a.m. In Jake's old blue Tacoma, the one locals recognized by the duct-taped front bumper. A neighbor clearing snow from his driveway saw them pass and waved. Sarah leaned out the passenger window and shouted, "Happy Powder Day." That simple moment, a cheerful call into the quiet morning, would remain the last known live sighting of the trio. At the trailhead for Quandary Peak's Blue Lakes approach sat about 20 minutes from their cabin. According to a local hunter who drove past around 6:10 a.m., the truck was already parked when he arrived. Fresh snow covered the windshield, suggesting they had begun skinning in minutes earlier. Their boot tracks appeared crisp and straight, moving toward the forested entry point at the base of the mountain. The hunter later described the scene as peaceful, like they had the entire world to themselves. Last social media activity. Between 6 o'clock and 6:14 a.m., the three posted their final digital breadcrumbs. 6:03 a.m., Jake's story, a photo of his ski tips as he started up the trail. Caption, "Breaking trail today." 6:09 a.m., Sarah's tweet, "Visibility low but spirits high." South Pole is calling. 6:14 a.m. Marcus's Instagram post. A drone shot still he had pre-edited the night before, overlaid with fresh snow, good friends, and a bluebird afternoon on the way. It would be his last post. Into the white silence. After that, the digital world went silent. No more pings. No more posts. No radio communication picked up by nearby skiers. No GPS connection after 7:02 a.m. when Jake's unit briefly transmitted before entering a zone investigators later described as a potential signal shadow. They skinned deeper into the backcountry, following a route they had taken dozens of times. But this time, the mountain would swallow their tracks before anyone realized something was terribly wrong. The powder day that had begun with excitement and crisp morning air ended in a silence that no one noticed at first. That was the most haunting part of the whole story. How a disappearance can begin so quietly, without alarms, without any sense of danger, simply by the slow passing of hours. Early afternoon. Expected contact that never came. By 1 p.m., the storm system had cleared out. The sky over Summit County transformed into that vibrant shade of blue unique to Colorado winters. Brilliant, endless, almost too perfect. Most skiers were heading down from the resorts by then, eager to thaw out in noisy après-ski bars or to upload their GoPro clips immediately. Jake, Sarah, and Marcus were expected to check in with a few friends by early afternoon, especially after big backcountry days. Normally, one of them would send a quick text, "Safe back at the truck," or "Dropping in now, meet you later." But this time, no messages came. Friends didn't worry right away. It wasn't unusual for the three to extend their tours, especially with 30 inches of untouched powder waiting at elevation. They were known for long days, leaving before sunrise, returning after sunset. Still, a few people noticed the silence. A fellow backcountry skier, Jenna Myers, messaged their group chat at 2:17 p.m. "You guys get out okay? South Pole must have been insane today." No reply. Mid-afternoon, the storm's hidden danger. While the sky turned blue at lower elevation, the upper ridges around Quandary Peak remained volatile. Gusts of 35 to 45 miles per hour whipped across exposed slopes. Spindrift blew like white sand across the cornices. Avalanche forecasters had issued a level 3, considerable, warning, specifically noting that wind-loaded bowls and leeward slopes were unstable. Jake, Sarah, and Marcus knew the risks. But they also knew the terrain. They had skied South Pole many times, in worse conditions. The confidence of experience is a double-edged sword. Comfort can mask danger. Late afternoon, when concern turned to unease. By 4:30 p.m., most backcountry skiers in the Quandary area were off the mountain. A pair of snowboarders who exited via the same trailhead later reported seeing only a single set of tracks leading into the forest, none coming out. Jake's blue Tacoma was still parked in the same spot, snow drifting slowly against its tires. But no one realized anything was wrong yet. It was only when evening approached that the first real thread of worry tightened. 5:52 p.m. A missed shift. Sarah was scheduled for a short evening shift at the cafe. She didn't show up. She didn't call. Her manager, who had known her for years, instantly felt uneasy. Sarah was the type who texted even if she was running 5 minutes late. He called her. No answer. He texted Jake and Marcus. No replies. Finally, he drove past their cabin. No truck. That was the first moment anyone spoke the words aloud. Something's not right. Nightfall, the realization. By 7:30 p.m., darkness had wrapped around the mountains. Temperatures were already plummeting below 5 degrees Fahrenheit minus 15 degrees Celsius, with colder wind chills on the ridges. Still, there was no sign of the trio. A few friends gathered at Sarah's cabin. They checked GPS sharing apps, but the trio's devices hadn't sent location updates since that single signal ping at 7:02 a.m. They tried calling repeatedly. Phones went straight to voicemail. At 8:14 p.m., Marcus's roommate called the Summit County Sheriff's Office. 9:06 p.m. Authorities respond. Deputies arrived at the cabin, took statements, and investigated the parking area near the trailhead. Jake's Tacoma was still there. Fresh snow covered everything but the windshield wipers. The realization hit hard and fast. They hadn't come back. They hadn't checked in. They were somewhere on Quandary Peak, with freezing temperatures settling in and no communication. This was no longer delay. This was an emergency. 10:30 p.m. Officially missing. The Summit County Rescue Group activated their first alert-level response. The news traveled quickly across Breckenridge. Radios buzzed. Texts flew. Ski patrollers, guides, and volunteers were contacted. Some were already putting on gear. In mountain towns, search and rescue triggers a communal instinct, the understanding that any one of them could be next. By midnight, more than 24 people were preparing to enter the darkness of the mountain. And still, no new sign, no message, no clue. Jake, Sarah, and Marcus had vanished into the white silence sometime after 7 a.m., and no one knew where to begin looking. The search for Jake, Sarah, and Marcus began long before sunrise, long before most of Summit County realized anything was wrong. It began in darkness, with headlamps flickering against heavy snowfall, and with the quiet determination of rescuers who knew they were racing against time and cold. 12:20 a.m. The first team steps in. The Summit County Rescue Group, SCRG, dispatched their first 6-person team toward the Blue Lakes trailhead. These were seasoned backcountry experts, ski patrollers, avalanche techs, wilderness EMTs, people who had pulled survivors off this mountain in worse conditions. They began by assessing the parking area. Jake's blue Tacoma sat exactly where it had been spotted hours before, frozen over now with a thin crust of rime. The rescuers circled it with headlamps, searching for footprints, ski tracks, or any sign the trio might have returned and left again. Nothing. Only the inbound tracks remained. There were no outbound tracks at all. Even under the fresh layer of snow, the rescuers could see that the ski tracks leading into the forest were deep, deliberate, and formed by 3 people traveling together. A knot formed in the team leader's stomach. Experienced backcountry skiers like Jake, Sarah, and Marcus always exited the way they entered, unless something had gone terribly wrong. 1:10 a.m. Following the track line. With avalanche beacons set to search mode, the first rescue team began following the trio's tracks up through the forested approach. The route was heavily drifted, forcing them to probe deeper to stay on the faint trail. The snowfall from earlier had softened but not erased the tracks entirely. Just enough remained to guide them. The woods were silent except for the rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch of skins on snow. The team followed the signal of Jake's last GPS ping, which investigators had pulled from his tracking app. It placed the group near the lower boundary of the South Bowl at 7:02 a.m., shortly before sunrise. It meant the trio had reached the base of the bowl as planned. Then the signal died. 2:30 a.m. Avalanche hazard. Near Treeline, the rescuers encountered the first obstacle, the wind slabs. Even with careful movement, the snowpack reacted underfoot. Hollow sounds, cracking tension. The wind had loaded the slopes all day, creating dangerous pockets in the very area the trio planned to ski. The team lead radioed base. "We're seeing instability at the bowl entrance. We cannot proceed safely upslope until daylight. Requesting drone support at first light." It was a blow. Every hour mattered. But safety came first. They established a temporary search perimeter instead, probing beneath drifted areas, checking tree wells, scanning with beacon receivers, and examining terrain traps. No hit. No equipment. No tracks diverging. Just the original upward trail. 3:40 a.m., expanding the search. While the first team held position, 2 additional teams were deployed to approach the South Bowl from alternate ridges. They hoped to intercept any signs that the trio might have redirected, taken shelter, or attempted an escape route. One team approached from the East Ridge, another from the Monte Cristo Gulch side. Conditions were brutal. Winds at 40 miles per hour. Wind chill around -18 degrees Fahrenheit, -27 degrees Celsius. Spindrift limiting visibility to 10 to 20 feet. Snowpack rating still considerable. Yet all three teams continued searching. For 05 a.m. First clue. At the edge of a small, sheltered stand of trees, roughly halfway up the ascent route, the first team found something partially buried in the snow. A black neoprene glove. It matched one from the brand Marcus commonly wore. He frequently removed a glove when adjusting camera settings. The team documented it, placed it in an evidence bag, and marked coordinates. But the glove alone meant very little. In the cold, losing one wasn't unusual. What concerned rescuers was that it was fresh, lying only inches beneath the newest snowfall. It indicated the trio had passed this point after the heaviest part of the storm had ended. They were higher on the mountain, and likely still traveling together. 5 a.m. The world wakes up. As firefighters, EMTs, sheriff deputies, and volunteers began flooding into the staging area, news of the disappearance spread across Summit County. Phones buzzed in ski cabins. Diners paused morning prep. Lift operators whispered as they punched in for their shifts. People knew these three. People admired them. And that made the situation heavier. By dawn, more than 40 trained searchers, 2 avalanche dog teams, and a command center had formed at the trailhead. 6:28 a.m. First light. Finally, with the first gray glow of morning, the teams prepared to enter the South Bowl proper. Avalanche teams readied their explosives to test the stability of certain slopes. Drones were unpacked, warmed, and programmed with grid search patterns. Beacon scanners were recalibrated. Everyone hoped that daylight would bring clarity. Instead, daylight brought something else. A discovery that would deepen the mystery rather than solve it. When dawn finally broke over the South Bowl, the rescuers expected the light to reveal answers. The terrain would be clearer. Tracks would be sharper. Clues, long hidden by the darkness, might finally come into focus. But instead, the daylight revealed something so strange, so unsettling, that several members of the rescue team later admitted it was the moment they realized this case would become one of the most baffling disappearances in Colorado backcountry history. 6:45 a.m. Entering the bowl. The first team crested the final rise leading into the South Bowl just as weak winter sunlight spilled over the eastern ridge. It illuminated a landscape of untouched white, the kind that makes seasoned skiers hold their breath. The South Bowl should have been full of evidence, ski lines, pole drags, tracks of ascents and descents, perhaps shallow depressions where the trio might have stopped to transition their gear. But the entire bowl looked completely unskied. There were no ski lines, no traverses, no discarded equipment, no shelters or dugout snow caves, no avalanche runouts or debris. Just a flawless, glittering slope untouched by human movement. 7:10 a.m. The missing transition point. According to the trio's plan, this was the exact location where they should have switched from climbing skins to descent mode. They always transitioned at the same cluster of boulders on the ridge above the bowl, a natural wind break and a perfect staging point. That point was empty. There were no tracks approaching it, no signs they had stopped, no signs they had gone around it. The rescuers were baffled. They had followed the trio's inbound ski track up from the forest, clear and unmistakable. That track should have led all the way to this ridge. But instead, 7:22 a.m., the track line ends just below the bowl. In an open glade where the slopes steepened, the inbound track suddenly ended. 3 sets of ski tracks came out of the trees. They traveled about 40 yards into the open. Then, abruptly, cleanly, they stopped. Not faded, not blown over, not filled by drift, not interrupted by an avalanche. just ended, as if the three skiers had simply lifted off the snow. Rescuers probed the area for over an hour, suspecting a hidden collapse, a cornice fall, or a slab burial. Nothing. No voids, no cavities, no weak layers disrupted below. The snowpack was pristine. A lead team member muttered, "Tracks don't just disappear." But here, they had. 8 a.m.m., the secret of the wind. At first, some theorized that the tracks were filled in by wind. But the snow scientists on site quickly dismissed that. Wind-blown snow doesn't create a perfectly clean terminus. It leaves uneven ripples, patterns, or faint depressions. It never erases all three sets of tracks at exactly the same point. And crucially, the snow directly beyond the endpoint, mere feet ahead, showed no sign of disturbance. It looked as though nothing had crossed that area at all. 8:17 a.m. The first drone pass. Drone pilots launched the first aerial sweep, flying grid patterns across the South Bowl, the surrounding ridges, and the drainage basin running toward Monte Cristo Gulch. The drone's live feed showed only smooth, flawless snow. No ski lines, no glissade trails, no human figures or disturbances. Even more troubling, there were no signs of wildlife activity either. No fox tracks, no snowshoe hare bounding prints, nothing. It was like the mountain had been wiped clean. 9:05 a.m. The second clue. As search teams spread laterally, one volunteer spotted something half-buried near a stand of wind-stunted pines, a small patch of bright color beneath the snow. They dug it out. It was Sarah's neck gaiter, frozen stiff. But it wasn't lying flat on the surface like dropped gear. It was found vertically, lodged in the snowpack as though it had been driven downward at an angle. Rescuers documented the gaiter, photographed the site, and marked the coordinates. But again, there were no surrounding tracks. No sign of struggle, no sign of digging, no sign she had removed it herself. It was just there. 10:40 a.m. Early theories form. Back at the command center, investigators began brainstorming possible explanations. Avalanche theory. Unlikely. There were no debris fields, no slide paths, no snowpack disruption. Wrong turn into dangerous terrain. Impossible. No tracks showed such movement. Whiteout disorientation. Maybe. But that didn't explain disappearing tracks or untouched snow. Equipment malfunction. Unlikely. Three people wouldn't all malfunction simultaneously. A human abduction. Discounted immediately. There were no tracks from any other party. Animal attack. Impossible. No predator leaves absolutely no tracks. Wind scour erasing evidence. Ruled out by snowpack specialists. The only remaining theory. They never reached the upper bowl. But the inbound track, crisp, 3 wide, consistent, proved they had. 11:30 a.m. Expanding the search grid. Teams began pushing higher onto alternative ridges, suspecting the trio might have diverted at some point. Drones expanded their scans to over 1,500 acres of terrain, including cliff bands, cornice edges, and the deep drainage basins. Nothing. One rescuer later described the scene. It was like searching a blank canvas. No tracks, no clues, no disturbances. Nothing to suggest 3 experienced skiers ever touched that mountain. It was the first time many began whispering a chilling phrase. This doesn't make sense. Because by all physical logic, it didn't. 3 experienced backcountry skiers, fully equipped, in familiar terrain, with inbound tracks leading upward, and then no evidence they ever moved another foot. Something had happened in that 40-yard stretch of snow where the tracks simply ended. Something no one could explain. By the afternoon of February 18th, roughly 30 hours since Jake, Sarah, and Marcus had vanished, the search effort had grown into one of the largest early-season operations Summit County had seen in years. What began as a localized response was quickly transforming into something else entirely. A full-scale mystery with no precedent in the region's backcountry history. 12:15 p.m. Avalanche dogs deployed. Two highly trained avalanche dog units, Arrow, a German Shepherd, and Kira, a Border Collie, were airlifted by helicopter to a safe landing zone below the South Pole. These dogs had located buried skiers in blizzards, in debris piles, and even under meters of consolidated snow. If human scent existed anywhere on the slope, they would find it. Handlers swept the dogs across the track ending area, the ridge above the bowl, the tree stand where Sarah's gator was found, all potential terrain traps nearby. But both animals behaved strangely. Arrow kept circling back to the same small area, the exact point where the 3 inbound tracks ended, then whining in confusion. Kira showed interest for a moment, and then nothing. No alerts, no hits, no scent trails leading upslope, downslope, or away from the site. Handlers exchanged uneasy glances. Dog teams almost always find something, even faint residual scent trails, even traces carried by wind. But here, it was as if the 3 skiers had never moved beyond that 40-yard section of snow at all. 1:40 p.m. Reco sweep. A helicopter equipped with a Reco detector flew grid patterns over the area. The system works like radar. If any of the missing skiers wore gear or clothing with Reco reflectors, common in jackets, boots, and helmets, the system would ping back a signal. The helicopter made 5 passes. 0 hits. Nothing from Jake's airbag pack, Sarah's jacket, Marcus's ski boots, any reflective equipment at all. This baffled investigators. All 3 were wearing Reco-enabled gear. Even if buried, the system should have detected something. But it detected nothing. 2:30 p.m. Expanding beyond logic. Teams began expanding their search into areas far beyond where the trio logically could have gone. They scouted cliff bands to the east, couloirs on the backside of the ridge, dense timber to the southwest, drainage channels leading toward Hoosier Pass. All of these areas were miles from their intended route. But search leaders, now desperate, refused to rule out any possibility. Still, every team reported the same thing. No tracks, no disturbances, no evidence of movement. Only untouched snow as far as the eye could see. 3:45 p.m. First media rumblings. Word of the mysterious disappearance began reaching local newsrooms. At first, it was just a standard missing persons alert. 3 experienced backcountry skiers unaccounted for after a major storm. But by late afternoon, reporters had learned about the strange detail no one could make sense of. Their tracks just stopped. That phrase lit up social media, outdoor forums, Reddit threads, ski blogs. People began speculating wildly. Some theories were grounded in mountain logic. A cornice collapse swallowed them, ruled out. They fell into a crevasse. The mountain has none. A hidden avalanche took them, no debris found. Other theories were not. Some commenters pointed to strange disappearances in national parks. Some invoked phenomena associated with sudden weather events. Others whispered about silent avalanches, microbursts, even electromagnetic anomalies. Most rescuers ignored the noise, but some couldn't help feeling it themselves. Something about this disappearance felt wrong. For 12 p.m., second discovery. A searcher combing the lower glades spotted a faint flash of metallic color beneath a snowdrift. After digging, he unearthed Marcus's drone controller. The strange part? It was undamaged, lying as if gently placed. No scratches, no cracks, no broken switches, and there were no tracks leading to or away from it. Rescuers checked it immediately. Battery dead. Last synced location, 7:14 a.m. Altitude, stored at ground level, meaning the drone had never taken off that morning. But Marcus always launched the drone during ascents. Always. 5:30 p.m. Theories become frustration. Search leaders held a tense briefing near the trailhead. Theories flew across the tent. They turned back before reaching the bowl. Impossible. Tracks led directly to it. They fell into a snow well or tree cavity. No cavities found. No tracks leading to any. They were buried by a freak avalanche. No avalanche evidence. No scent detection. No reco. They moved after snowfall erased tracks. Unlikely. Timing didn't match wind patterns or snow accumulation. Then one ranger said quietly, "What if they ascended beyond the ridge and dropped into a different valley?" But even that didn't fit. Drones and helicopters had scanned those valleys thoroughly. 6:15 p.m. A mountain closing in. Light faded quickly. Temperature plunged. The search teams were forced to retreat for safety. Many of them stared back at the South Pole before leaving, unsettled by its stillness. One described it later as, like the bowl was hiding something, like it wanted to keep its secrets. 7 p.m. Families arrive. Inside the command tent, the families of the missing skiers gathered quietly. Jake's parents had flown from Wisconsin. Sarah's mother drove through the night from Denver. Marcus's sister arrived from Colorado Springs. Their faces held the same expression, fear mixed with disbelief. How could three people so skilled, so cautious, simply vanish without a trace? How could the mountain offer no explanation? Authorities promised the families that the search would continue at first light with even more teams, more equipment, more coverage. But privately, many rescuers admitted something unsettling. They had never seen a disappearance like this, and they had no idea what tomorrow's search would bring. By February 19th, the disappearance of Jake, Sarah, and Marcus had transformed from a local mystery into a story gripping the entire Colorado ski community. Overnight, the case drew in specialized search teams from across the state, news crews, and volunteer backcountry skiers, all converging on the South Bowl area with one goal: find the missing trio, or at least understand what had happened. 5:30 a.m. First light, expanded search. The first light of day revealed a stark panorama. The South Bowl glistened under clear skies, with wind-sculpted snow shimmering like glass. From above, the slope looked pristine, a perfect white canvas, with no new ski tracks, no equipment, nothing to indicate human presence beyond the known track terminus. Searchers deployed in coordinated grid patterns. Avalanche dog teams covered ridge lines, couloirs, and treed sections. Snowmobile teams combed lower access routes and drainage channels. Helicopters with thermal imaging scoured the upper bowls and surrounding gullies. Every approach converged on one haunting detail: the same 40-yard stretch of snow where the tracks ended. Nothing beyond it showed any sign of passage. 6:15 a.m. Unusual weather. Meteorologists monitoring the area noted a sudden, highly localized wind event. While the valley below enjoyed calm conditions, gusts above 10,000 feet reached 50 miles per hour, with temperatures plummeting to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, -29 degrees Celsius, and visibility dropping to near zero. Rescue coordinators suspected this could have complicated the search, covered any shallow tracks, scoured exposed slopes, made navigation dangerous for helicopter teams. But wind could not explain disappearing tracks entirely, especially three sets terminating abruptly in the same location. 7:20 a.m. New discovery. While combing a ridge overlooking the South Bowl, a volunteer spotted a small, blue fragment of fabric partially buried near a cornice edge. It was immediately recognized as part of Jake's ski jacket, consistent with his outerwear. No other equipment nearby. No tracks leading to it. Snow around it completely undisturbed. This fragment was cataloged, but once again, the mountains seemed to yield nothing else. 9 a.m. Advanced rescue teams arrive. By mid-morning, professional search and rescue specialists from Denver and Aspen arrived with reco scanning devices, avalanche airbag probes, drone operators with high-resolution cameras, thermal imaging units capable of detecting body heat up to 400 meters away. The new teams conducted overlapping sweeps of Monte Cristo Gulch, Hoosier Pass slopes, South Bowl ridges, and tree stands. Small hidden couloirs leading from the track terminus. All scans returned negative results. 10:30 a.m. Theories multiply. Command center discussions grew tense. Investigators began entertaining explanations that had never been seriously considered in previous search efforts. Sudden terrain collapse or hidden crevasse. Ruled out. The mountain has no crevasses and snowpack was stable. Avalanche. Ruled out. No debris field, no disturbed snow, no avalanche activity in that precise area. Human error or misnavigation. Unlikely. The trio were highly experienced and familiar with the terrain. External intervention or foul play. No tracks from others, no signs of struggle. Anomalous event. Some rescuers quietly speculated. Could something like a sudden wind vortex, microweather event, or rare mountain phenomenon account for a complete disappearance? Even seasoned mountain searchers whispered that this was unlike anything they had ever encountered. 12 p.m. Community mobilizes. By noon, the news spread beyond the mountain. Ski towns mobilized. Local ski shops offered gear and volunteers. Lodges opened as staging areas for search teams. Social media flooded with photos of the trio, hashtags like #FindJakeSarahMarcus trending. Friends and community members began raising funds for lodging, equipment, and additional professional support. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It had become a community-wide vigil. 1:45 p.m. Reports of strange sounds. Some searchers reported hearing unusual sounds echoing across the bowl. Faint whistles, cracking noises, and snow singing under unseen wind. While atmospheric phenomena in mountains can cause eerie effects, the timing and location of these sounds coinciding with the track terminus unsettled even the most skeptical rescuers. One veteran guide said, "The mountain wasn't just quiet. It was watching and listening." 3 p.m. Drone surveillance intensifies. Drone pilots conducted close sweeps over cornices along the ridge, hidden gullies, and tree wells. Long slope lines where tracks could theoretically continue. Footage reviewed later showed absolutely nothing unusual. No figures, no equipment, no traces. Just snow sparkling under the high-altitude sun. 4:30 p.m. Families return. By late afternoon, the families were updated with preliminary findings. Their faces reflected disbelief, anxiety, and frustration. Jake's father muttered, "They wouldn't just vanish. They can't just vanish." Investigators could only nod. They themselves were struggling to make sense of the mountain's silence. 5:15 p.m. Nightfall approaches. As daylight faded, winds picked up again. Search teams reluctantly retreated to the staging area. Volunteers, exhausted, stared toward the South Bowl one last time. The mountain remained unchanged, untouched, and indifferent. The tracks that should have led to answers led instead to absolute emptiness. Rescuers faced a chilling reality. This was not a normal missing person case. And yet, the search would continue the next day, with new strategies, new technology, and a growing realization that whatever had happened here had left almost no trace. By the fourth day of the search, February 20th, the disappearance of Jake, Sarah, and Marcus had transcended the bounds of a local mystery. News crews had arrived from Denver, Aspen, and even national outlets, turning Summit County's ski towns into a hub of speculation, theory, and desperate hope. 6 a.m. Search resumes. The day began with another aerial sweep. Helicopters with high-resolution cameras and thermal imaging passed over the South Bowl, nearby couloirs, and ridges surrounding Quandary Peak. Drone pilots coordinated to create overlapping grids, hoping to catch any trace of movement or heat signatures. Every sweep returned the same eerie result. Nothing. No tracks. No disturbed snow. No equipment. No heat signatures. The snowpack remained pristine, untouched, frozen in time. Searchers moved in teams of 4 to 6 on the ground, combing. Hidden gullies. Dense tree stands. steep couloirs that had been deemed too dangerous initially. Despite their efforts, no sign of the trio appeared. 7:45 a.m. Families and community gather. At the command center, families of the missing skiers convened with sheriffs and rescue coordinators. Volunteers from local lodges, ski shops, and mountaineering clubs arrived, offering food, gear, and manpower. There was a palpable mix of hope, fear, and disbelief in the air. Friends of the trio brought photos, stories, and even video footage of previous backcountry adventures. The command center's walls soon became a collage of memories. Jake tuning skis in his Breckenridge shop, Sarah laughing on a summit ridge, Marcus capturing a perfect powder turn on drone footage. For everyone involved, the human element was deeply personal. These weren't faceless hikers, they were beloved members of the ski community. 9 a.m. Strange phenomena. Several experienced searchers reported unsettling occurrences. Unexplained wind shifts. Localized gusts would blow in the upper bowls while the lower trails remained calm. Odd snow rippling. Patches of snow appeared scoured in patterns that didn't match wind or avalanche activity. Faint echoes. Sounds like whistling or snapping ice that seemed to move across the slopes without source. These incidents unnerved even the most skeptical rescuers. Some whispered about unusual mountain microclimates or rare atmospheric phenomena. Others were more cautious, unwilling to speculate. 10:30 a.m. Another fragment. A volunteer searching near the tree stand where Sarah's gator had been found uncovered Marcus's ski pole, partially buried in snow. No tracks leading to or away from it. No other equipment nearby. It was lying flat, with the tip buried just beneath the snow surface. The recovery added more frustration than clarity. All three skiers were highly careful and would never leave behind equipment unless compelled by extraordinary circumstances. Yet nothing else was found. 12 p.m. Media attention escalates. News outlets arrived with helicopters, cameras, and satellite crews. Social media exploded with speculation. The story became a trending topic. Skiers vanish in Colorado powder. Tracks disappear mysteriously. Online discussions split into factions. Logical mountain accidents. Snow-related anomalies. Unexplained phenomena, or even conspiracies. One local reporter described it as, "The mountain swallowed them and refused to give them back." 1:45 p.m. Psychological toll. By midday, the emotional weight of the disappearance was beginning to affect volunteers and families alike. Rescue team members reported sleepless nights, nightmares, and a gnawing sense of futility. Families gathered around photographs, sharing memories, reciting inside jokes, hoping that a breakthrough might appear at any moment. One friend whispered, "They wouldn't just disappear, they're somewhere. We just haven't found the path yet." Even the most seasoned searchers admitted privately that the lack of physical evidence, no tracks beyond the 40-yard terminus, no equipment, no snow disturbances, was deeply unsettling. 3 p.m. New theories. Command center discussions began, including unconventional ideas. Rare microavalanche vortices, hypothetical small snow collapses that leave no debris, rapid snow burial, localized pockets of drifting snow that could engulf a person without leaving conventional tracks. Extraterrestrial speculation, mostly on social media, dismissed by authorities. Human intervention, kidnapping, or foul play. Investigators kept this on the table, but there was no evidence. Despite the theories, no explanation fit the facts. The mountains seemed to defy reason. 5 p.m. Authorities speak. Sheriff representatives gave the first official public statement. "We have a large, experienced team searching all known areas where the three skiers could be. We urge the public to remain calm. At this time, there is no evidence of foul play, but the search remains active and ongoing." The media coverage amplified the story nationally. Backcountry skiing forums lit up with posts, guides sharing their experience, enthusiasts debating theories, and countless armchair detectives poring over every detail. 6:30 p.m. Sunset and retreat. As the light faded, temperatures dropped sharply. Snowdrifts began forming across the upper slopes. Teams retreated to the staging area for safety, but not before one volunteer paused at the track terminus and said, "Whatever happened here, the mountain is holding it." It was a phrase that would echo throughout news reports, forums, and later documentaries. The human element, the families, friends, and local ski community, felt a mixture of hope, dread, and disbelief. The mountain offered no answers, only silence. By the fifth and sixth days of the search, Jake, Sarah, and Marcus's disappearance had become more than a missing persons case. It had become a phenomenon, capturing the attention of not just Colorado but the nation. What began as a hopeful search now carried undertones of dread, frustration, and an eerie sense that the mountain itself was keeping its secrets. Day 5, Advanced Search Techniques. Search teams returned at first light, now incorporating every available tool. Reco scans were repeated multiple times over the bowl, ridges, and gullies. Every pass yielded no new signals. Thermal imaging helicopters combed the mountain from multiple angles, but the snow reflected sunlight and cold in ways that made detection nearly impossible. Drone surveillance extended beyond Quandary Peak into adjacent peaks and drainage basins. Volunteers recorded hundreds of hours of footage. Despite their sophistication, the technology failed to locate anything. The tracks, the gear, the presence of the trio, everything beyond the 40-yard terminus remained absent. Investigators now considered more extreme possibilities, but every theory collided with the same reality. The evidence defied logic. Community mobilization. Locals mobilized like never before. Ski shops, lodges, and cafes opened their doors for volunteers. Experienced backcountry skiers and guides offered time, gear, and expertise. Donations poured in for food, lodging, and additional equipment. The case drew hundreds of volunteers, all eager to help, all hoping to find the trio alive. Social media kept the story alive, with hashtags like #FindJakeSarahMarcus and countless personal tributes flooding Instagram and Twitter. The ski community was in shock. Experienced veterans admitted privately that they had never seen a disappearance so inexplicable. Families on the front lines. The families arrived daily, participating in briefings, reviewing maps, and even helping coordinate volunteer teams. They shared stories with rescuers. Jake's father spoke of his son's meticulous preparation habits. Sarah's mother recounted childhood dreams of mountains and adventure. Marcus's sister described his careful photography routines and how he never left gear behind. Investigators took these testimonies seriously. These were not careless adventurers. Their disappearance was not due to inexperience or recklessness. Day 6, Media and Public Pressure. National media outlets descended. News reports described the disappearing tracks phenomenon, the pristine snow that had swallowed all signs of life, the involvement of advanced search technology. Experts were interviewed on live broadcasts, but most admitted the facts made little sense. The public response was a mix of fascination, speculation, and fear. Online forums theorized avalanches, hidden terrain collapses, or rare microweather events. Conspiracy theories began to emerge, claims of clandestine government tests, or unexplained phenomena. Yet within the local community, the focus remained grounded: find their friends. Psychological toll. For rescuers and families, the stress was becoming tangible. Volunteers reported nightmares, anxiety, and exhaustion. Command center staff described an unnatural silence on the mountain that weighed on every decision. Families struggled with the uncertainty. Were their loved ones alive, trapped, or gone forever? The lack of physical evidence, no ski lines, no tracks, no gear beyond the occasional fragment, amplified the feeling of helplessness. Emerging official statements. Sheriff representatives issued cautious updates. We continue searching all logical routes and surrounding areas. We are expanding search grids daily and using all available technology. At this time, we have no evidence of foul play, but we remain open to all possibilities. The statement reassured the public, but did little to explain the disappearance itself. Journalists emphasized the strange nature of the case. 3 experienced skiers, skilled, prepared, and familiar with the terrain, vanishing without a trace. Ongoing mystery. Investigators began categorizing evidence, or the lack thereof. Track terminus. 3 inbound ski tracks ending abruptly in untouched snow. Fragments of gear, Sarah's gaiter, Marcus's drone controller, and a piece of Jake's jacket. No additional signs, no sleds, poles, footprints, or shelters beyond the terminus. Technological nulls, reco scans, thermal imaging, and drones found nothing. It became increasingly clear that this was not a standard missing persons case. The mountain had swallowed them, or something unseen had intervened. Impact on Colorado backcountry culture. The disappearance sent ripples through the mountaineering and ski communities. Skiers became wary of routes previously considered routine. Local avalanche courses began emphasizing unexpected environmental anomalies as a teaching point. Friends and colleagues reported unease returning to their favorite slopes. The case became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most experienced adventurers are vulnerable in the backcountry. As days turned into weeks, the disappearance of Jake, Sarah, and Marcus settled into Colorado's collective consciousness as a haunting mystery. The search officially lasted for 10 days, then tapered off as harsh winter conditions and the limits of human endurance forced teams to pause. Yet the questions remained, unanswered, unresolved, and chilling in their simplicity. What really happened on Quandary Peak? The end of the search, but not the mystery. By February 28th, authorities officially suspended the active search, leaving behind a handful of recovered items, Sarah's gaiter, Marcus's drone controller, and a fragment of Jake's jacket. The bizarre 40-yard stretch of snow where all tracks had ended. No bodies, no further equipment, no definitive clues. Sheriff representatives acknowledged the lack of evidence in a press release. Despite extensive search operations using all available technology, including thermal imaging, reco scanning, drones, and ground teams, the missing individuals have not been located. The case remains open, and we urge anyone with information to come forward. Even now, the absence of physical explanation fuels speculation and unease. Families' reflections. The families were left with only memories, recordings, and hope. Jake's parents recalled his careful nature and passion for the backcountry, convinced he would never take reckless risks. Sarah's mother expressed frustration and sorrow over the lack of closure. We may never know what happened, but she was never careless. She prepared for everything. Marcus's sister focused on preserving his legacy, his photography, his love of the mountains, and the joy he brought to others through his art. Their grief was compounded by the strangeness of the disappearance, a lack of answers that made every day feel unfinished. Impact on the skiing community. The disappearance left a lasting mark on Colorado's backcountry culture. Increased awareness of risks. Skiers and mountaineers revisited safety protocols, emphasizing communication, GPS redundancy, and check-in procedures. Community solidarity. Annual vigils were held at trailheads, honoring Jake, Sarah, and Marcus while promoting responsible backcountry travel. Cultural mythos. Locals spoke in hushed tones about this South Bowl mystery, warning newcomers that some mountains harbor secrets beyond human comprehension. Many skiers who knew the trio admitted that returning to the same routes now carried a weight of unease. Theories that persist. Despite exhaustive investigation, no theory fully explains the disappearance. Avalanche or snow collapse? Unlikely, no debris or disturbance. Human foul play, no evidence, no tracks. Animal attack, impossible, no predator tracks. Weather anomaly or microavalanche vortex, speculative, no documented precedent. Unexplained phenomenon, remains in the realm of mystery, reinforced by the disappearing tracks and untouched snow. Some mountaineers suggest that the mountain itself holds the answer, an unknowable combination of terrain, weather, and circumstance. Others turn to speculation, acknowledging the limits of human understanding when nature acts beyond expectation. The enduring questions. The mystery continues to grip both professionals and enthusiasts. Where did Jake, Sarah, and Marcus go after their tracks vanished? Could the mountain have concealed them naturally, or did something else intervene? Will modern technology ever uncover clues that were hidden in those pristine bowls of powder? How will this case shape missing person protocols for backcountry travelers in Colorado and beyond? Every skier who looks at Quandary Peak today sees both beauty and menace, a reminder that even the most prepared adventurers are vulnerable to forces beyond their control. Even without resolution, the story of Jake, Sarah, and Marcus lives on. Through photographs and videos, Marcus's aerial footage, Jake's meticulous planning, and Sarah's detailed journals offer glimpses into their lives and spirits. Through community memory, annual events, mountaineering safety campaigns, and storytelling ensure that their adventure and disappearance remains a cautionary tale. Through enduring mystery, the unanswered questions ensure the story will be retold, debated, and investigated for generations. As one local guide said quietly in a documentary, some mountains give answers. Some mountains keep secrets. Quandary Peak has kept theirs. And in that silence, in the untouched snow and the invisible tracks, the legend of Jake, Sarah, and Marcus continues, an enduring mystery carved into Colorado's powder paradise.